everybody, welcome to Boardgame Heaven. My name is Raymond, and in this video I'm taking a look at Elios Reach for the Sun, a game by Philippe Proux. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, which plays in about 15 minutes for ages 7 and up. It's published by Helvetiq, who were friendly enough to give me a copy to review. And it's a wooden game, it's an abstract strategy, it's really fun. And before I explain how to play the game and share my thoughts, I'd like to ask you to please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're subscribed, you're an absolute legend, really helps the channel. And also please check out my Patreon page by following the link in the description below. With that out of the way, let's set up a game. To set up a game of Elios, you separate all the colored beams from the white ones, and you pick one of each color to put on the table like this, and you put 2 of these yellow discs in the center, and this represents your sun and the sunshine. The order of the colors doesn't matter at all. Then, depending on the number of players, you deal out these white ones, which are basically wilds or jokers and can be used for any color. So in a 2-player game, every player takes 2 of these. In a 3 or a 4-player game, you give 1 of these to each player. Leave the other yellow discs within easy reach of all the players. And then you take the bag and put in all the remaining beams and the remaining colors in that bag and give that a good shake. And then all players, you can take turns or you can do it one by one, draw out without looking beams out of this bag. For 2 players, every player picks 16 beams. In a 3-player game, you take 10, and in a 4-player game, you pick 8 beams. So let's say we're playing a 3-player game. I'm going to pick 10 beams from the bag without looking. That's 10 beams, and in a 3-player game, everybody gets 1 of the white ones. All players just leave those in front of them on the table. That's open information. But now you need to split these into groups of 1, 2, or 3 beams of different colors. You can't have a group with the similar colors in it. So for example, I may want to put, let's say, these 2 together, these 3 together, these 2 together, these, and maybe I want a group with singles. So let's do this. Now, the reason for doing this is you are going to place, you're going to take turns and place beams onto these beams. You have to stack them. But there are a couple of rules that you need to follow when placing those groups of beams onto these beams around the sun. So, first of all, a beam must, of course, always be placed on top of a beam of the same color, like so. The white joker beam can be placed on top of any color, but then of course the next one needs to be either blue, light blue, or another joker. The second rule is that all the beams that you're placing, were I placing multiple beams, so 2 or 3, have to be on the same level. That's why no group can have 2 of the same color. So I could place this one here, and this one here. Those are all on the second level. And the third rule is that none of the beams can exceed the level of the sun itself. So this disc here, so this is currently the second level as well. So a player at this point could not place any beams on top of these, or these. But there are other things you can do. So aside from placing a group of beams onto the beams here in the middle of the table, you can also split a group. So that means simply taking one of your groups, like for example, like this one, and split it into 2 smaller groups of 1 in this case. And if you have a group of 3, you can also split it. You'll have 1 group of 1 and 1 group of 2. So for example, if I'm in a situation where I cannot place any groups at all, I could now, of course, I could place this and this together right now. But let's say we're in a situation where I can't, and I see that the red one is already at the maximum level and the orange one is not. I could split up this group and then place it next turn. Unless, of course, another player takes a turn that prevents me from taking that action. And a third option I can do instead of placing discs or splitting groups is placing another sun disc in the middle. And that is mostly a last resort because you want to place your beams as fast as possible, because the player or team to place all their beams on the sun wins the game. Note that a 4-player game is played in 2 teams of 2 players. Team members alternate their turns, so A, B, A, B. And if a player has no beams remaining, they skip their turn, and the first team to place all their beams wins the game. So that's basically how you play the game. A player either places beams, or splits groups, or places a disc, and then the next player goes next player, until one of the players or one of the teams has no more beams remaining, and that's the end of the game. So let's go to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts on Elios Reach for the Sun by Helvetiq, who I'd like to thank for sending me a copy to review. Let's start with the components. Well, the components are all made of wood, plus you get a nice cloth bag to put all the pieces in, and the box itself is pretty compact. It's just big enough to fit all of the wooden pieces inside the bag, in the box, with the rules, of course. So that's good, nice and compact, doesn't need to be bigger than it needs to be. And all the wood is made from FSC wood, so that is also a plus for me, and it looks really nice. All of these lovely colors, it's very bright, very nice looking. It's certainly an eye catcher. The artwork is pretty abstract, of course. There's not a lot in the way of art. You get the cover of the box basically, which shows you basically the setup of the game, or the sun. And it's all very abstract, so there's not much to say about artwork. It's just presentation is quite nice. The theme is, well, since it's an abstract game, not that important to me, at least. I mean, your pieces are in the shape of a little sun. This is, of course, the sun, the yellow circle, and the colors are the rays of sunshine, I suppose, refracted into all the colors of the rainbow, which looks nice, but, technically it doesn't really matter that much for the game itself, because the gameplay is where it's at. I like abstract strategies a lot, and this is a pretty clever game. It seemed really simple. You have your wooden beams here, sunbeams, and you have to place them on top of the corresponding colors. So, you just do this and that's that. But you want to get rid of all of your pieces before all the other players. So you want to preferably have groups of 3, which is the maximum, and place all 3 at the same time. But they all have to be placed on the same level. You can't have them on different levels as you play them. So that's something to keep in mind. Then you can also not go beyond the height of the sun disk. So the sun disk is the maximum level, basically. And that makes for a very tactical game, because you're looking at the stash of beams that the other players have and their colors, and you're thinking, okay, if they have the opportunity to play their biggest groups of 3, then they're most likely going to do that. And you kind of want to prevent that, because that fills up the space really fast. And you want to be able to put yours there as much as you can. So you're not only trying to get as much as your beams onto the sun, but you're also trying to prevent the other players from doing the same. And that, I think, is really clever. And you're really looking at every player, what do they have and what are they going to do? They have the same colors as I do, so I'm going to play those. So I blocked them and they can play them, because you're trying to force the other players into either not playing their beams and then splitting up a group. If they really can't do anything else, you can split up a group into 2 smaller groups, and then they'll have to take an extra turn placing that group, but at least they can play them then. So that's a bit of a situation you want to avoid, but you're gonna have to do that at some point. And the worst thing you can do is being forced into putting another sun disk onto the sun, making the level higher, because that is your turn. And that means that the next player has free range of another level of sunbeams where they could potentially place up to 3 beams. So that is what I really like about this game. It looks just like a tactical game where you just have to stack them, but it's actually quite take that. It's quite competitive, and I really enjoyed that. It's very clever, it's very fast, and it's a game that you're gonna want to replay. So the replayability is also very good. You play this in about 15 minutes, as the box says. It's quite correct for either 2 or 3 or 4 players. And because of that, you're gonna want to play again, you know, have a rematch, see if you can win this time if you lost. Also, what I like about the game that I haven't mentioned yet is simply the tactile factor, because you know, all these wooden pieces, they just feel really nice in hand, and it has a little bit of a dexterity game at some point when the stacks are higher, like 4 or 5 high. You don't want to knock them over, not that that means anything, you just stack them back up again. But yeah, that's really fun as well. Finally, there's the language dependency. You get the game with 5 rule books in French, Italian, German, Dutch, and English. And otherwise, of course, there is no language involved at all. So once you know the rules, you can play this with just about everyone, because the game itself is, of course, language independent. So on all accounts, thumbs up. I'm pretty impressed with this. It's a really fun game. It's cleverly designed, and I really enjoy playing it. So I can certainly recommend trying out Elios. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. That really helps the channel. Please also check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support what I do. That is also very much appreciated. And Patreon Saints get early access to all of my videos, access to Patreon exclusive material, their name in the credits, and you save up for physical goodies such as the BGH pin. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Board Game Heaven.